Okay, recording has started.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Let's call this meeting to order. Let's start with the roll call. Vice Chair Gail Jackson. Vice Chair Gail Jackson.
Vice Chair Gail Jackson did send me an email that she's hoping to join us a little bit later, but she did have a conflicting meeting. I do not believe Commissioner Curtis will be able to join us today.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jesse Breckenridge. Commissioner Jesse Breckenridge. Commissioner Cal McCloy.
But it seems like he's with us, so maybe he'll be able to unmute himself.
So Commissioner Breckenridge is present, but he is unmuted.
He's muted.
Muted. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cal McCloy.
Present.
Commissioner David Steiner. Commissioner David Steiner. Commissioner Thomas Waddell.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner David Steiner. All right, city staff.
Quick comment. It looks like Carol Curtis joined our meeting.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome, Commissioner Curtis. City staff, Council Member Deb Harris.
Here.
Thank you. Economic Vitality Director Heidi Hansen.
Heidi will not be able to join us today.
Airport Director Barney Helmick.
Present.
Airport Programs Manager Brian Gall.
Present.
Airport Communications Manager Claire Harper.
Present.
ARFF Ops Manager Tim Skinner.
Present.
And Recording Secretary Marciela Sanner.
Present.
Thank you. Moving on to preliminary general business, public comment, participation, and input. Items presented during the public participation input portion of the agenda cannot be acted upon by the Commission. Individual members of the Commission may ask questions of the public, but are prohibited by the open meeting law from discussion or considering the item among themselves until the item has been officially placed on the agenda. Are there any public comments, participation, or input at this time? All right, hearing none, let's move to announcements, reconsiderations, changes to the agenda, and other preliminary announcements. Okay, hearing none. Approval of the minutes from January 12th, 2023. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
Tom Waddell, motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do I hear a second?
I second. This is Commissioner Breckenridge.
Thank you, sir. All those in favor, please unmute. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Thank you. City Council updates. Councilwoman Deb Harris. Councilmember Deb Harris.
Good afternoon. I don't have any updates. This is my first meeting. I just wanted to say I'm happy to be here. Sorry I missed the January meeting, but I'm here to learn, and hopefully you all will be very patient with me while I get up to speed. So other than that, I'm just going to sit back and listen. If you have any questions for me, I'll try and answer to the best of my ability.
All right. Thank you very much, and welcome, Councilmember Harris, to the Airport Commission meetings. And we look forward to hearing City Council updates at our next meeting. Staff reports, Claire Harper.
Thank you. We'll wait till we get to the employment slide. Oh, I apologize. We have not received our employment numbers from our airline. So next month, we will report on our February as well as our March numbers.
I will look at pulling up our last month's employments while you go over the next slide.
Okay, thank you for that.
And then our total operations for February are very comparable to January. Orville, if you'd like to chime in and add anything, or Barney, please do. We have added another Dallas flight for the month of March. So we will see, we have our 2 Dallas flights for March. So we anticipate having a few higher operations. As you know, we certainly had a lot of snow and the runway was closed for about 2 days due to visibility. We didn't have any planes going in or out. So that weather certainly does impact the operations at our facility. Barney says good. Anything you'd like to add, Orville?
Well, actually, the runway wasn't closed. It's just the visibility was so low. The staff did an excellent job of staying ahead of this. They did close the runway a couple times. I don't feel it just so they could get out there and blow the snow because it got so thick. Tim can talk more about that. But you know, obviously, when you have weather like this, operations are down. I mean, honestly, this is looking more typical of like 10 years ago since we lost United. But as you said, we did just get second Dallas flight back. So I'll be honest, given how much snow we've had, I feel pretty good about the numbers. So
thanks, Orville. And yes, thank you for that very important correction that the runway was not closed, but there were a few days where there was nobody on the runway. And we will, if you have any questions about snow removal or anything like that, we are going to have our whole section. Tim and Barney will be giving a little presentation on our snow operation. So we'll touch that when we get there. And then it looks like Missy was able to pull up our employment. And for January, you can certainly see we are about what we were for 2021. So certainly hoping to get those numbers back up. Okay, Orville, and we added fuel flow to this as well. Oh, and actually we just received employment numbers from American. Just got the email, came in a minute ago. And for February, we had 5,085.
And could you just explain the definition for employments?
Seats on the.
That's one passenger departing from the airport with a ticket.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Claire. And I think at this point, are we going into the fixed-based operator report?
Yes.
Okay, great. Wiseman Aviation. Yep.
yeah, good afternoon, Orville Wiseman, Wiseman Aviation. Sorry, I missed the last meeting too. So we've obviously had a lot of snow. It's been kind of I mean, honestly, our snowfalls are a little more indicative of way back in the day, but this snow has been kind of unique in that it just didn't go away. You know, it seemed like 20-some years ago, you'd get a foot, it'd be sunny the next day, you get another foot the following week. And kind of led up to that 120 or so inch average we used to have before we got into the drier season. It is wreaked a lot of havoc out at the airport with us. You can't see out any of the windows in my lobby right now, and the ice actually busted out one of the windows and ripped some of our venting off the roof. We got that all taken care of. Probably the most notable thing was I bought a very large loader the end of last year, and an 18-foot pusher, and honestly, I don't know what I would have done without it this year. I have a $500,000 in just construction equipment, basically to deal with the snow, between the 20,000 pound loader and the smaller articulating loader, and then the track skid steer with the blower. And it's allowed us to help keep up with everything and keep facilities open during the inclement weather. Obviously, field numbers are down, employments are down, but we are starting to see an uptick. I've been, a little bit of a party pooper saying I think there's a recession coming. I think there's a recession coming. Well, I'll know more about that in a month or so. Historically, for those of you who are new to this, our season kind of runs, say, Easter to Thanksgiving, and it slows down over the winter for obvious reasons. So we're starting to approach what should be our busy season. Something worth noting is every round, the Department of Defense, we always make the solicitation for contract military fuel and flag. I did it for a couple of years, and then I retracted from it just because of the cost of living and everything, and the rate at which they want you to sell the fuel for makes it really hard to make it work. But I did rebid this year for contract fuel, and I expect to get something kind of interesting that has nothing to do with the fact, because they wouldn't know I bid it, was we just had last Friday 6 F-18s spend the night from Miramar. That's the most F-18s I've ever had on the ramp in the 25 years I've done this. And I typically only saw him as contract fuel, but he said he was going to go back and tell the rest of his guys in his unit it was a great place to spend the night. So, and just give you an idea what kind of fuel those airplanes take. The 6 of those airplanes took right around 10,000 gallons of fuel. A semi is about 8,000 gallons, so they took more than a tanker. We obviously like to see them. It's good for me. It's good for the airport, in that I'm paying fuel flow fees. They all stayed in hotels, had rental cars. Obviously, went out and ate and drank and had a great time. So we like to see that kind of traffic. I don't feel like they're too much of a nuisance getting in or out in terms of noise. And they're certainly welcome. So other than that, I don't really have a whole lot to talk about. I do have coming up, I just confirmed that today. We periodically work with special forces on jump operations. We do have some special forces coming in down the road that will be basing with us down at what we call the BC, the Business Center. They'll be operating out there for about 3 days. And they come back. It's kind of a base camp where they come in, fold their chutes. We put a full gym in there for them so they can work out. And they're looking forward to coming back. We're looking forward to seeing them come back. There'll be a couple smaller jump planes taking them out, and they'll jump into the Grand Canyon, all kinds of crazy places, and while they train up here. Other than that, don't have a whole lot to talk about. If anybody wants to ask any questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, thank you very much, Orville. Commissioners, any questions for Wiseman Aviation or Claire Harper?
No, Orville, this is Tom Waddell. I just wanted to tell you that that sound of jet noise over my house was a blast from the past. I enjoyed it. I hope you get to see more of those guys.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We don't get a lot of comments like that. We get a lot of comments to the contrary. Although we really didn't get any, as far as I know. Maybe the city fielded a couple calls, but these guys, they didn't do like a bunch of passes. In fact, it was kind of boring the way they came in. But I appreciate that in the support. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for sharing the pictures. Very much appreciated. All right. Thank you very much, Orville.
Sure.
And Claire. We will move to grant updates. Mr. Brian Gall.
Thank you, Chair Caldwell. So just a little bit of background, especially for anybody who hasn't seen this slide before. We added this update of a map of current projects at the airport, along with a few that have recently been completed. So you'll see on the right, there's a legend that shows the funding source with different colors there. So red being the CARES funding, that's the federal funding that we received in grant form as part of coronavirus relief. That's eligible for maintenance and operations costs, including maintenance projects. So those red projects that you'll see listed are maintenance focused. They include things like the terminal maintenance phase 1, which we're in the final stages of contracting on, terminal fire sprinkler replacement, which is currently under design. We will be replacing the entire fire sprinkler system within the airport terminal starting later this spring. We also finished the Wiseman parking lot maintenance. That was a repaving of the parking lot at the FBO, Wiseman Aviation. And we completed a number of phases of airfield maintenance with things like restriping and crack repairs, other types of pavement repairs, some lighting and signage. There are going to be future phases of that, but we've already finished 2 phases and have 1 nearly complete. For the purple color there, that's the airport fund related projects. Last summer, we completed the construction of the economy parking lot and electric vehicle charging stations adjacent to the terminal. We currently have the paid parking system going in the process of being installed. So anybody who drove out to the airport today, or if you've been out here recently, might see that there is work going on our existing parking lot, the terminal parking lot. That is adding the infrastructure that we'll need to mount the equipment for the paid parking system. I got some photos of that a little bit later on in the presentation, but that work is ongoing. And then for other FAA grants, the snow removal equipment building is currently under design. That is a building to house all the snow removal equipment that will tie in pretty nicely to what Tim Skinner is going to talk about today in terms of snow removal operations in the airport. I think that might help illustrate why we're looking to have that building added to our facility here to make it a little bit more efficient for snow removal operations. We're also working through the early stages of contract negotiations and eventually design for a project to add some drainage improvements to our existing commercial aircraft ramp. Basically some drainage systems to help reduce the amount of water on the ramp. That water in the wintertime often turns into ice. So to make it a little bit more user-friendly for both passengers and air crew and airline employees, we're looking to take some more of that drainage underground and away from the walkways. We're also working on a project to relocate taxiway whiskey. That is due to a newer FAA standard that says that you're not supposed to have direct access from an aircraft parking area to a runway. So you might be able to see on the map that taxiway whiskey comes straight from a parking area onto our runway. So to help meet that new FAA standard, we're going to be shifting that taxiway and are looking to start the design of that later this year. Next slide, please. So some of these projects were mentioned on that previous map, but a number of our projects, as I said, are grant funded. So we have the CARES maintenance projects, things like the fire sprinkler replacement and the terminal building maintenance. We also have a series of federal grants that are going into the design and construction of the snow removal equipment building. We're currently going through a drainage master plan update. That is a plan showing all of the grading and drainage across the airfield, identifying areas that are prone to flooding, where we can make drainage improvements and really educate future projects of the airport in terms of drainage design. I mentioned the taxiway whiskey relocation. That is also a federal project. And the terminal apron drainage, same as that one. One project that is not federally funded, but is grant funded, is an airport pavement management system project. That is going to be part of a broader program that our partners over at the Arizona Department of Transportation, or ADOT, do annually to review airports and help them with pavement maintenance. In our case, it's going to involve a seal coat, crack seal, and restriping of our runway, our main parallel taxiway, a number of our connecting taxiways, and the area around some of our hangars. The big part of that, and the one that's probably going to get the most attention, is that from July 9th to 15th this year, there will be a runway shutdown to allow them to complete those activities and maintain that pavement. So our partners over at the airlines have been informed about that date and should be planning in terms of not selling tickets or refunding anybody or rescheduling people who had flights booked during that period. We do have a few airport funded projects as well, mostly related to the paid parking system. So recently we brought the contract to purchase the system itself. That's the equipment, gate arms, things like that. So some support services from the company who will be providing the system that will be running for paid parking. We also currently have construction ongoing for the entry and exit lanes, as well as some communications and electrical work that will be required to integrate that whole system. So we're still right now on target for a start date sometime in May of the paid parking system starting up at the airport. And on the right side, you'll see a rendering of that snow removal equipment building that we talked about previously as well. Next slide, please. So for some of these projects, I mentioned the paid parking system. We published the map on the right along with a press release that was sent out from the city, is also posted on airport social media, will be on our displays here in the terminal, and will also be up on our website, just informing passengers that there is construction going on the entry and exit lanes to the terminal parking lot. We've built a temporary entrance so that passengers and employees can still access that lot while we're working in the current driveways. And that picture on the left shows the extent about of where they are at today. They're doing a little bit of work on the other side, but so far it's been mostly demolition of the existing facilities. Starting sometime in the next week or two, we're going to be building the new facilities, which is curb and gutter, the pavement for the lanes themselves, as well as islands for the paid parking system to be constructed. Next slide, please. And of course, the big project that is affecting, or the big grant that is affecting the largest number of projects is that CARES grant I mentioned for coronavirus relief. So we've completed construction on 4 major projects so far. That was the Westplex hangar and shade repairs, the airfield maintenance phase 1 and 2, and the parking lot rehabilitation over at the Wiseman facility. The terminal maintenance project, airfield maintenance project phase 3, and fire sprinkler are currently under construction. And we have design pending on a project to repair a section of pavement on our runway where we've seen some cracking that we want to take care of under this grant. And we have additional planned projects for maintenance of the ARF station. And it's not on the list yet, but we do have plans in place to add another series of projects to reconstruct the pavement in the terminal lot. Once the economy lot is open, that's our new parking lot that will be open after the paid parking system's in place. That will allow us to move some vehicles out of the terminal lot. And as we move those vehicles out, we'll be able to rehabilitate the pavement where those vehicles have been so far, basically keeping that lot always full. So the CARES budget was a little bit over 18 million, divided into a number of different cost items, including personnel and operating costs. The operating equipment and maintenance costs is what all the CARES projects are coming out of. And we're still working on the final numbers, but it looks like we'll actually be spending a little bit more than that originally budgeted 6.7 million on projects at the airport. And that's mostly due to our operating costs for contractual and commodity items being a little bit lower than anticipated. So we're going to shift the funding from that over to the projects and get as much work as we can done under these grants. Next slide, please. Oh, I guess that was the update I have for you today for grants and our projects to the airport. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Brian, this is Barney. I've got one question for you.
Sure.
Could you briefly explain some of the difficulties we've had with the changing course of the CARES and how it's slowed down our ability to spend it in a timely manner?
Sure. Yeah, so Barney brought up a good point in that originally with the CARES grant, it was rolled out very quickly, and it was through a legislation passed through Congress and handed down to the Federal Aviation Administration to administer to airports. So originally, they gave us a pretty wide definition of what was eligible to be spent for the CARES type projects and CARES funding in general for operations of the airport. As we started spending those and submitting our request for reimbursement, the way that grant works is the city, the airport spends the funds, sends that as a big packet every quarter to the FAA, and is then reimbursed for those funds. What we found was we started to get rejected on some items that we had previously been told were eligible. And it turns out that there was some confusion among different teams within the FAA on what was eligible, or if it was eligible, what requirements were made for reporting that. So we did have some early projects and some early costs of things we spend at CARES that we were told from our local FAA office that we're eligible for reimbursement. But then once we tried to get those funds back, we're then denied. We actually appealed some of those decisions and had our local FAA office join our side on the appeal because they stuck by their original thought that we should have been eligible for reimbursement. But we were ultimately overruled by the FAA national office in Washington, D.C. So some of those costs ended up coming out of the airport fund that we thought were originally going to be out of CARES. And what that did was basically add a number of grant provisions, grant requirements to some of the dollars that we spend, especially related to construction projects. So for example, for things, anything that we build under the CARES, even though it's a maintenance cost, it has to follow the federal funding guidelines as larger grants would for capital projects. That's things like Buy American certification, disadvantaged business enterprise goals, labor standard reporting, things like that we were originally told we wouldn't need to follow, but now we are having to complete on all the projects that we're doing. So that really adds a lot of paperwork and a lot of administrative time to the projects that we're doing. And it adds some additional items onto our contractors who are working on it. They have to do different procedures to keep track of the items that the federal government is requiring, which really the biggest impact is that it draws out the start time for each of these projects. So there's a lot of background, a lot of homework that we have to do to make sure that all of these required grant provisions are being met and that we're tracking them correctly so that when our audit comes from the FAA, that all of these projects will pass muster and stand up to those audit requirements. Barney, is that kind of what you were looking at? Was there anything else to add on that?
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Tom Waddell, I got one question. The new economy lot is not the overflow lot that we're using today, right?
Correct. Yeah, the overflow lot, as it sits today, once the paid parking system is placed, is going to revert to its original use, which was as a rental car storage lot, a place to store the additional rental cars we have. And we're also going to use it for employee parking. We're going to section off a front area of that where employees can park, not have to compete with passengers for spaces within the paid lots. The economy lot is just past that overflow lot on your right. It is mostly complete. It's covered in snow right now, so it's a little bit hard to see. But we are not opening that until we get the paid parking system in place because it is going to be challenging to implement the paid system with vehicles already in the lot. We are going to have to deal with that on the terminal lot, obviously, since that one's completely full of vehicles, but we've found operationally it'll be easier for us to restrict that to one lot rather than have to deal with having cars in the lot when the paid system starts on two different lots.
And is the sidewalk already extended from the terminal out to the economy lot?
It is. There's a few final punch list items we need to complete there. There was an airport art project that added these bronze medallions into the sidewalk that are going along with a custom fabricated section of fence. There's a little bit of a drop off on one side. That's going to tell a little bit of a story about the region. Those fence panels still need to be installed, and there's some work we need to do to clean up the medallions a little bit, but the sidewalk itself is completed at this point.
Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Brian, for your grant report. Commissioners, any questions for Brian before we move on? All right, hearing none, we will move on to the communication and business updates. Claire.
Thank you, Chair Caldwell. Next slide, Missy. So we will get the hardest thing over with first. Heidi Hansen did want to join us today, but unfortunately she did have a conflict. I don't think I need to read this out loud. I'll give you all a moment to read this out loud. Sum it up a little bit, that we will be opening Barney's position tomorrow, and that there will only be able to be one commissioner as part on the interview panel, which Chair Caldwell had expressed interest previously. So that's who Heidi has gone with. But the commissioners will have time to offer feedback and meet with the final candidates during a meet and greet. So what the city has been doing for higher level positions is they do their traditional interview process, and then they invite the finalists to a meet and greet where each finalist can talk a little bit about themselves, their qualifications, answer questions, and then you can kind of have that one-on-one mingle time. And after that, you're able to submit feedback virtually, written, or you could certainly just talk to Heidi or whoever is the hiring manager for that position. And then we will have Barney's retirement party will be held on Friday, April 21st at 4 p.m. on the Gopher Hole. And for some reason, I think that date is actually, that could have been a typo on my end. I think that Friday actually might be the 21st. Nope, Barney says it's right. It's right. I was second guessing myself. So yes, we will be celebrating Barney at the Gopher Hole at 4 p.m. Very casual. Everyone's invited, and you can certainly bring a spouse if you choose, because everyone is invited. And we won't be able to talk any real official airport business, depending on how many people attend, because it would be a quorum issue. So once the date gets a little bit closer, maybe at our next meeting, we'll see who's joining us, but we're excited to celebrate Barney. And if you have any questions during the recruitment process, you can certainly reach out to Heidi or myself. Heidi won't be able to provide more information than I will.
So it's a 2-week window for applications.
And then it looks like they'll review after 2 weeks. And 2 weeks is pretty standard for the city application. Any questions on that? Or are we ready to move to the next slide?
I don't hear any questions.
Okay, so I will be giving a brief presentation. I believe Commissioner Jackson had asked about this towards our end of the year last year on what we're doing for advertising. So what I'm going to highlight today is our digital advertising. So this is all served digitally to people on their phones or their computers, and we leverage a contract with Datify through the CVB, and Datify is more of that targeting audience. So we set the perimeters of who we want to target, and then they do that. Next slide, please. So this Fly Market campaign, this is our 90-day report from October 4th to January 6th. The goals were certainly to increase people visiting Flagstaff, airports, and hotels. The markets that we went after were the Phoenix and the Dallas markets, re-engaging previous visitors, so people who had been previously in Flagstaff, people who had been at Sky Harbor, and people who are lookalike. So maybe they were in Camp Verde to visit, maybe they were at the Grand Canyon. So we want to capture all of those people who have been within our area that are also in Dallas. And then for the Phoenix market, we're re-engaging people who have been in the airport, and then people who frequently travel. Next slide, Missy. So from this 90-day campaign, we had 805 trips, 47 hotel visitors, and we had 6 visitors to the airport. Underneath that, you can see what the total revenue was generated. And then impression-wise, we had that 749, and then people that actually clicked on it was the 2,582. So I'm pretty happy with these numbers, but there's certainly room for growth. As you see at the top, each visitor spent an average of $536, but we spent, on the left, you'll see that's the $126.66. That's what our advertising cost comes down to for the return that we're getting. I think Barney has a question.
To clarify, this is money spent in our community, not spent on the airport.
Yep, this is money spent in our community. So the airport economic impact for those 6 tickets or the 6 travel, you see is that $3,000 216 number. But really the big number comes from the people who have reached the destination in general.
So I have a question. Are these numbers comparable to other regional airport marketing? I don't know if the data is out there to I guess compare or to see if you know the campaign is successful.
The campaign is successful, and you'll see on some of our other numbers, and I've seen it of what it compares to for like our click-through rate. Datify really is kind of the top level, and we would not be able to afford it unless we were leveraging with the CVB and they're letting us use it. I could certainly reach out to other regional airports, but I don't think anyone our size would be able or uses Datify. It's certainly something we could look at, but just taking a step back and looking at it as a whole for an advertising campaign, you see that 126.66 for what we paid for what we got. And like when we were going with KNAU, it was almost $600 is what we were spending first getting back. So I would say that yes, this is successful. Bringing the 805, even just 6 airport visitors, we certainly are looking at how we can increase that. But I'm not totally familiar how successful other digital, because this is so specified, what other digital regional airports our size are running.
Yeah, I was just curious to know, you know, and not so much that it's successful, because I think any data that we receive, it helps us to, you know, it helps us to actually, you know, look at what we're doing, and then, you know, looking at the numbers, having the data, you know, knowing what works and what doesn't. So I think it's very valuable. And then I think there would be some value add to, you know, if that data is out there, to see what the other numbers are. But this is great data.
Thanks. Next slide. So we have our return on ad spend for, this might be actually, yeah, our return on ad spend per day is the $75. And then we just kind of have that recap of our destinations, just kind of visual views of a different way. Altogether, the average length was 3 days. For the airport, again, we had those 6 visits throughout 20 days. And the people were there and back. The phone captured them within 3 days. And again, we have that estimated campaign impact. Next slide, Missy. Again, this is just another visual of a way to see it. We have the purple as a day trip. Green is 2 days. Blue is 3 days. And the orange red as 4 days plus. So it looks like people came and went to the airport. A lot of that could also be rental car revenue. Those numbers we need to hone in on a little bit more. But those observed staying in hotels were likely to stay 2+ days. And then this is the average length of stay in the market so far is longer compared to the visitation for the 2022 annual report. And this is likely because the campaign is focused on airport visitors who are likely to stay longer than closer drive-by market, so that Phoenix market. Next slide. And then you can see where the people were that picked up our ads and came. It's nice to see that we do have kind of all of Arizona saturated, as well as perhaps Grand Canyon area and Page. We have that Southern California. And then we do have, as we would love to see, that Dallas-Fort Worth, since that's what we're targeting at. And we are going into the Phoenix and Camp Verde market as well. So you can see that Phoenix Prescott is at 60%. Next slide. So here you'll see the age that we're going at. This was the income that we were targeting. We may do a little adjustment on that. This was suggested through our CVB and our Datify, but this is the income household that they thought would be most successful for our ad. So that's what we were serving. And then it's kind of, it looks like it's the single income or the dual income households that are getting most of our traveling. So we have that 45 to 65, making about 150 plus. With 1 or 2 people in the household is who we're bringing in. Next slide. I think that I have a few more. So again, this is just kind of the same information put in a different digital way to see. We have our total impressions, approximately 750. The clicks about 2,500. That total spend 5,661. And then this is where you can see that benchmark, Commissioner Caldwell, that I was referencing to. And the average is the 0.22. In that CRT, the average display, the CRT stands for click-through rate. So that's how many people are clicking on the ad. Next slide, Missy. In this one, we'll just break down our total impressions, how we spread them out through each area. So we did the Dallas area, the Verde Valley area, and the Phoenix area. And you can see from that previous map slide, that's just how many people pick it up. So we have that Dallas area, we have a lot of people that were picking it up. And then that Verde Valley Phoenix, the people that were elsewhere, like we had, I think we had a few numbers for Florida, and we had that LA. Those are people who have left our area and immediately gone back to the other area. And that concludes, there's one more slide that is just kind of a summary of what it is from Datify, but that concludes my presentation on our digital ads. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I'm a little curious on how, on that digital, I guess that digital footprint from when a visitor clicks on the ad, the digital ad, like how do we know that they have come to book travel and visit, that it's from that digital ad?
Maybe it couldn't be that digital ad, it could be another ad, but if they click on that ad and then they're within our geo targeting, then it picks them up.
Okay.
So I mean, it's not, does that make sense? It could, I mean, we certainly could have some fluke numbers, but if they're served the ad and then they're within our geo fencing, then it captures them.
Yeah. And so the six visitors that were identified, do they say that I'm here because of this digital marketing? Like, how do we know that? I'm just trying to connect the dots. I think data is great. I'm just trying to figure out like how, is there a survey, or like, do they self-identify in a certain way, or?
It would be if they self-identify with their phone tracking. So like your location services picks up where you are, and then that information goes back to Datify.
Got it. Okay. I was just curious what that digital footprint looked like.
Oh, and I have like, what are slides, like what they're getting served?
Well, I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
If you go to the next slide, Missy, I'll have the ads that are being served. So what it looks like. So these are the ads that are popping up on their phone. So maybe they're looking at their local newspaper. Maybe they're looking at real estate ads. These are what the digital ads for this campaign, this is what they were shown. And then they would click on that and that would go to our website.
Got it.
And if you want, our CVB is certainly our expert in Datify. So if we want a further explanation, we can certainly invite them to do a more in-depth presentation on digital footprint and on how digital ads are served.
Yeah, that would be great. I think, you know, especially if the report is going to, if you're going to be reporting and showing the numbers, it would be great to kind of understand the data a little more. So yeah, that would be wonderful.
And I apologize that I am not speaking too eloquently on the data. I have the numbers that I have, but they'll be able to perhaps tie a bit together. So perhaps quarterly we can do what our digital ads are doing and report back on that and have them be able to assist.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Any other questions on our digital ads that we're serving through Datify?
Nope, I don't hear any. I think that I like the ads. I think they represent Flagstaff well. So nice job on these.
And we have one for every season. So they asked if we wanted to switch out our spring one, and I said, no. We have lots of snow on the ground. Let's keep this one for a little bit longer. So probably April 1, I'll switch out for something springy, but I want it to certainly reflect what it looks like right now. So that's why we're keeping the snow up. Next slide, Missy. I wanted to touch on some recent media coverage received. This is all in part to Tim's crew of operations and our people that are making us look wonderful with all their snow removal. So there's 2 videos I'd like to show that kind of give a sum up of our operations, and then we can move into more presentation. So if you want to go ahead and do the first Daily Sun video, Missy, that would be great. And commissioners, let us know if you're unable to hear it, but hopefully you are. Missy, you might have to maybe unmute your computer. It says there's no sound.
Yeah, I was about to do that. Let me know if you can hear it now as soon as I start this. Are you able to hear that?
No.
No, I think when you share, there's a little icon that drops that you can actually share sound, like you have to do it separately. It's kind of weird in Teams. So when you share your screen.
Computer sound, Missy.
When you go to share, it'll, and I think it's on the top, it'll say you have to actually share the sound as well.
Include computer sound.
Yeah, it's really, it's weird.
Okay. Let me know if it starts playing now.
To keep the runway at Flagstaff's Pulliam Airport open, operations crews had to clear more than 3 million square feet of runway, almost 2 miles of pavement of ice and snow. Planes coming into the airport at speeds of up to 100 or 120 miles an hour can't land on thick ice or wet snow. So the airport operations crew, often staffed with as few as 3 people at a time, worked through this last winter's storm, driving for up to 15 hours straight to keep snow from accumulating on the airstrip. Their work was grueling, according to Airport Operations Manager Tim Skinner, but it was also successful. The runway hasn't shut down once this winter, and it's down to this ops crew and their 8 pieces of heavy machinery.
So we clear the ramps, both the commercial ramp, the transient ramp, and the Guardian Medical ramp.
Somewhere near 3,000 tons of snow an hour?
It all depends on how tall the windrow of snow is and what kind of snow it is. If it's a giant frozen windrow that's been sitting out overnight for, a day or two. It moves along at about 2 miles an hour, just chewing through the giant windrow of snow. And depending on the type of snow, it'll throw the snow a good 80 feet away.
In addition to clearing snow with equipment like this, the ops crew is also prepared to respond to emergencies. They're airport fire and rescue, full-fledged firefighters working 48-hour shifts. On top of other duties, they drive this specialty fire engine, nicknamed the crash truck.
Carries about 1,600 gallons of water and about 240 gallons of foam concentrate, along with 500 pounds of dry chemical extinguishing agent. And this has a pump panel like a structural fire truck you would see in town, but it also has turrets or water keepers on the front that are all operated with joysticks from inside the cab. So technically you don't have to get out of the truck to operate the water cannons and spray water.
They do have to get out of the truck, however, to manage wildlife that wanders onto the runway or to repair and maintain airport security gates. They're an all-purpose team, and they certainly do their work with purpose. Sierra Ferguson, Arizona Daily Sun.
Piece. There was a live shot during the snow. Played
Is that
out
the
one.
second video?
Yep.
It is still snowing in the high country. Steven's got your latest rain and snow totals across Arizona. I'm Nicole Kreitz. Your News at Noon starts right now. While overnight showers are clearing up for the valley, the snow is still falling in the high country. So how is that impacting the airport in Flagstaff? Let's check in with Ian Schwartz.
We talk about plowing freeways, but what about plowing a runway? Yeah, a lot of crews working around the clock to keep things clean, keep things dry. We got some of the plows going here at Flagstaff's airport. Pretty impressive operation. Boy, they have been busy in the past 72 hours. I'm joined with Tim Skinner this morning. One of your jobs, fire, keeping the runway clear. What has it been like the past 3 days here?
Oh, guys have been working their tails off, just kind of around the clock. Very limited on crews. We have about 8 pieces of equipment that's specialized for the runway.
What's the one we're looking at to the right here that's moving?
That is a rotary broom, excuse me. That's used to kind of help clean up after the rotary plow and the displacement plows go through. So yeah, crews have been working day and night shifts over and over and over again, just trying to get caught up on it. Can say that we haven't closed the runway, so guys are doing really good.
That's awesome. 7 pieces of equipment running pretty much 24 hours a day, and you kept the thing clear. Maybe some issues with visibility when it comes to flying, but that's out of your hands.
Correct. We try and keep the runway open for any type of aircraft operations. If the aircraft themselves delay or cancel due to their own specifications, that's kind of on them, but we try and keep it open for them as best we can.
Fantastic. How long has it been since you've seen a storm like this here?
It's been a couple of years. I would say good probably 2, 3, 4 years or so.
Wonderful stuff. Thank you so much, Tim, for your time. You got to keep the roads clear. You got to keep the runways clear when it comes to a big storm, and this one delivered 30-plus inches in Flagstaff, a historic storm for sure, but no match for the guys working here at Flagstaff's airport.
Yeah, we wish them well. What a busy job. A flood warning remains in effect for the Tonto Basin, where water levels keep rising.
Thanks, Missy. So those are my 2 favorite media ones that we received. You can also see, and hopefully everybody saw it, Barney made the front page. And we had another feature on the Daily Sun. That was a Sunday spread on February 7th. And then on February 27th, I was able to do a live with Fox 10 for their morning show, as well as February 28th, we were on ABC 15. Our messaging certainly remains the same. We want to get the word that we are Flagstaff's airport and we're an airport, that we do our best to keep the runway open. And when we had the runway did close, and Tim can certainly talk about that briefly for a little bit in this past storm. But with that first set of storms, they were able to keep the runway totally clear. We certainly had more wind in that second set of storms, and it's really based on the visibility is what it's up to if flights go in and out. And then flight tracking is always available on flagstaffaz.com. I know I received some emails from commissioners about the status of the runway and all that, but you're able to go online and see updates on the flights. I believe. Thanks, Councilmember Harris. That is all that I have. If anyone has any questions, we'll then move into some snow operations with Tim and Barney.
Yeah, great videos. Thank you so much for sharing. Commissioners, any questions for Claire?
This is horrible. I just wanted to say that was me in the King Air. Just want to make sure everybody knew that.
I muted myself and made that announcement in the room, Orville, and I said, I hope, yes, I should have said that.
I'm just kidding.
It was Orville, the one person that was going out in that weather, but at least we know that, man.
Hey, I got back in. I was first plane to leave in 2 days. I had to get my daughter back down to U of A, so.
I love it.
If it's anyone, we're glad it's you.
Yeah, definitely. Claire, thank you so much for sharing the videos. And Missy, I did not see those, and so it was nice to be able to view those. I do have a question about the upcoming the rollout of the paid parking. I have not been to the airport in a while, and so I'm just wondering, is there any type of communication, any signage or anything saying that this is coming in May?
We have on our digital displays that map that Brian put up, along with messaging that the parking entrance and exits are temporarily closed, and that paid parking will be implemented in the end of spring. So I have that going up about every 2 minutes for 10 seconds on 4 displays throughout the terminal. So we're certainly hoping that people are picking up on that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Shock to the people who park without coming into the airport.
I'm sorry, I missed that. What did you say?
I'm sorry, this is Tom Waddell. I think it's going to come as a shock to the people who park out here without coming into the terminal. There's a lot of parking out there that's not airport related, I think.
Oh, right. Agreed. All right. Thank you very much, Claire.
It looks like Commissioner Harris has her, or I'm sorry, Councilmember Harris has her hand up.
Yes.
Yes, I've been hearing about the paid parking at the airport. So can you explain? So is there not going to be any more free parking? Is that it? So none at all? So everything will be paid? Is that correct?
I'm going to defer to you, Brian.
Brian, do you have a slide coming up about the paid parking? Because if not, I would defer that to that section.
No, we don't have any more discussion about that on the agenda today. Just what we mentioned previously on the grant updates.
Okay.
But to answer that that question, so I guess a little bit of background additional to the first question that Commissioner Waddell brought up. So there has been some external communications as well. For example, we did a press release with this recent construction that mentioned that paid parking is coming at the end of May. Or at the end of spring. It has been on our website for some time too. And we did also do some social media notifications and press releases back when those rates were taken to council over a year ago. So that has been out in the public at this point for probably upwards of 2 to 3 years that this discussion has been going on. We also did presentations to the Chamber of Commerce, and Barney, help me out here. I think there was one other group that we presented to, Downtown Business Alliance. Barney, if you're saying anything, you might be muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, and we've also spoke to the Rotary and Econa. But they're actually, and I don't know if you're going to get to this not Brian, but there is a grace period when you go into the parking lot for those who are just dropping off and picking up, where there will not be a charge.
Yeah, I was going to go into the operation
Okay.
specific in a second. But yeah, Barney's correct. So for the question of parking access, so the two main lots at the airport are the economy lot, which is is completed but not yet open to the public, and then the terminal lot, which has been traditionally our parking lot for customers. Those will both be paid parking, except for, as Barney mentioned, the first hour is free. So that'll help us by designating some free spots closer to the terminal. So when passengers come in to say pick up a bag that maybe didn't make it on their flight when they need to go up to the rental car counter, it'll be a quicker walk for them instead of having to park way in the back. We'll have some designated spaces for that. Also, for people who maybe are going to one of our rental car counters, maybe not even necessarily taking a flight, but need somebody to drop them off, there'll be a way they can do that. There will still be free parking for employees. We're going to be managing that at our current overflow lot, which will then be the rental car and employee parking lot. But for passengers, anybody staying for more than that 1 hour period, that's when those hourly and or daily rates will kick in. And those rates were approved by council, I believe it was December or January of 21, or it was right at the transition from 21 to 22, right around the New Year's of 2022 was when those rates were approved.
Thank you.
Nope. Yep.
Councilmember Harris, let me add something to that we have some flexibility with the rates. The initial rates we got were not supposed to start until last summer. Well, there was delays in the program, so that's not going to start until this summer. And the reason we wanted flexibility is to try to balance the lot. We don't want one lot to be fuller than the other, so we have the ability to raise or lower $1 for those if we can balance those out. We also have a little bit of flexibility, and we're waiting to see on the grace time frame.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I wasn't as concerned about the rates because I know what we pay when we go to Phoenix and park our cars. So that's not an issue. What I was really getting at is that do people know? Because if I drive out there and I've got a flight and I'm running late, which I shouldn't be, but stuff happens, and then I'm not aware that there's paid parking. Now I've got to figure that out. Otherwise, I could have had somebody drop me off. Do you see? So I'm just wondering, you know, how are we going to, now I know, so I won't make that mistake.
Well, we will be increasing the media blast the closer we get to a date. Our date,
okay,
a little bit fluid between the snow and making sure all of our contractors, because there's multiple contracts that have to be agreed on this. As we get closer to knowing a finite day, we will do multiple media blasts from our office and from Sarah's office at City Hall.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brian, for answering the question, and Barney, and thank you, Council Member Harris. That was a very good question. So, all right. And thank you to the staff at everyone that worked so hard to clear snow and keep our airport safe and operational. Great visuals and great to see that. So thank you, everyone. Moving on to informational items.
Orville has his hand up.
Oh, yes. Orville, yes, please.
Yeah, just real quick, one thing I wanted to say, and I think it ties in really well with what we just talked about. The paid parking is important from my perspective in that, you know, we've had a lot of cars in the past in both my parking lot as well as, not that I'm charging for parking for people who are spending the night or whatever, but as well as the other lot. And when you have this kind of snow, and you got a lot of cars that really don't belong there, it creates a lot more work and a lot more liability, which is what a lot of people don't realize, because if something happens, they're going to come back on the person with the lot to take care of their car. And I can tell you when Brian did our parking lot with that project, We had, for example, one van we found out had been there. His registration had been expired for 2 years. He just was parking there for free. I guess we weren't paying very close attention, but this is long overdue in terms of cleaning up this sort of renegade parking situation out at the airport.
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Orville. Are we ready to move on to informational items? Snow operations, Tim Skinner.
Thank you, Chair Cardwell. Good afternoon, Commission members. I'm here to talk about snow. Really quick before we get started, special thanks to Claire and all the work she did to do some media outreach and get some awareness and recognition. Really proud of our staff, really proud of our team to do everything we could to, like you were saying, keep the airport operational and safe as best we could. And a special thanks to Orville and his staff as well for not only their patience but also their help. We actually had a couple critical pieces of equipment that were stuck this last storm, and they jumped in and they helped actually clear the commercial ramp. So a big shout out for that. And then finally with Orville, we actually timed that perfectly. Orville, we said don't shoot the video until that King Air flies in front of the equipment. So you're welcome on that aspect. But and thank you. It's really important. Thank you, Claire, for putting that up. The videos and associated timelines with it. When those videos were shot, if we'd only knew, in January and February what we were in for or what we would more to come. So you're looking at the table right now, which you're either proud of or scared of. And I think Orwood mentioned to it earlier. This was kind of an unprecedented / normal winter for us. And so if you look at the chart right now. Between July 1st and March 2nd, we had the second snowiest season on record for Flagstaff. And a couple of slides from now, you'll see that the numbers for March 2nd, the day after, was quite a bit more. So who knows kind of where we're at. But again, clearly, I think everybody on this call knows that we had an unbelievable amount of snow. And, I think the video did a great job of that. I think everyone on this on the call and staff-wise have been again, very patient and realizing that, again, crews are working their tails off. And so we're doing the best we can. Anyway, so these are the dates or the totals for July 1st and March 1st. Missy, next slide, if you don't mind. This was, Claire and I had a discussion about this earlier. We kind of took the wind out of our sails when we were, it's the second busy or, second snowiest season on record. And then we had a conversation. Well, actually, it's only the 9th. Well, if you look at the days again, this one's July 1st through June 30th. I'm okay if it doesn't snow for a couple of months or years from now, but yeah. So obviously, clearly, we look at those records and maybe something there was some significant late spring or even early summer snowfalls. But even so, not only were we second from July 1st to March 2nd, if you look at the chart and do the math, we were even for the entire winter season or that entire year. We were probably the snowiest, at least in the last 30 years. So again, unbelievable amount of snow. So next slide, please. And so again, thank you for everyone to put this slide together, Claire and Missy. Again, kind of showing the numbers with the March 2nd storm. So I don't know when they cut off the March 1st storm total, if it was midnight or whenever it was, but that last storm was again over 2 feet, and so again it keeps kind of piling up. Had a conversation with somebody in the city. At what point does it matter? 120 inches, 140 inches. It's just again, we can't overemphasize. It was just a lot of snow. So again, very proud of the team. Very proud of all the team for doing the best job they can. We had a lot of pieces of equipment that broke, that failed. Worked really well with our fleet shop to get them back up and running. Like I mentioned earlier, we had two critical pieces of equipment that were stuck, that were actually right outside of our fire station, where we had to call an outside big towing wrecker truck. I'll see if I can get some videos and maybe we can post them, or maybe Claire can post those. But again, it was chaos for sure. And one of the cool things we talked about, and I'm sure again everybody else on this conference knows, we had a meeting with our new city Flagstaff emergency manager this morning. One of the things we talk about as it relates to, the snow and the importance of clearing that, obviously, for all the users of the airport, Orville, his team, his clients, his folks, the commercial side of the house, again, general aviation, private pilots. But if we look at this last storm, we brought up the fact that, you know, both the interstates that leading into the air, leading into Flagstaff were closed. So I-17 and I-40 were closed. And so, you know, the airport obviously in its importance is a very critical piece to if we ever to, you know, need to get supplies or any sort of support into Flagstaff when we have events like this that actually kind of isolate us. So we take that very seriously and try and do the best job we can. Next slide, please. And Missy, I think you can just kind of slowly click through these if you want. I don't want to spend too much time on here, but see, here are some of the snow photos throughout the season of the aftermath. Again, a couple of the different pieces of equipment we had. It seemed like it started snowing and it never stopped. So again, we have a hard time with it and, you know, shake our fists at it now, but hopefully we'll be smiling, celebrating in the summertime when, you know, it keeps the wildfires at bay. So again, hopefully looking forward to. I heard that the reservoirs down south of us are already starting to fill up. So again, hopefully with all the snowpack, it'll be good for our much needed or for our forest for our much needed drought or much needed water for our drought. So that's about it. Again, what you're seeing here, obviously, you know, this is what we try and do. This is an example of the customers. We try and make sure that we're going to get them on the ground or make it so that aircraft can get on the ground as safe as we can. So that's really about it. I don't mean to generalize. I just really, I guess all I have is snow in my head right now. So is there any questions? I'd be happy to answer them for you.
This is Commissioner Waddell. Just again, pass on my thanks to your crew for what a great job you guys did. I know you were working your asses off out there and it's appreciated.
Thank you, Commissioner. I will. I appreciate that. Orville, I see you had your hand up.
Yeah, Tim, I just wanted to reiterate just what a great job you guys did. I can't thank you enough, nor can my staff. And, you know, as you were making those presentations, the one thing I don't think everybody really realizes either is you got a lot more surface area than you had back in those days with some of those higher snowfalls. So you had a lot more cubic feet to move. And it was just a super impressive job. Also, without trying to get emotional, I want to say thanks for finding my dog.
Oh.
For those of you who don't know, during that big storm, I didn't have any power. I went out to the airport to get a generator to go home to generate some heat. And I don't know why. If any of you know me very well, you know my dog's everywhere with me. He's next to me on the boat right now. And he just like ran off in a whiteout. And the one gate was stuck open. And I called the tower, said, could you ask everybody to watch out? I drove around the airport. And Tim dropped everything and came right over.
Happy to help, Orville. Again, I've been there, not necessarily in this storm, but I've been there. So absolutely.
I'll never forget it, to be honest. I mean, I was in tears, and Tim found him. He found him. He went down the taxiway out down Grumman Lane to Shamrell. I don't know where he spent about a half hour, but Tim found him trying to get in the red gate back to the FBO with icicles hanging on his face. And I just, you know, those are the little stories that go on at the airport nobody hears about. But I just want to say thanks. I know this meeting's gone on, so I don't want to drag it on. But thanks again, Tim. I honestly can't thank you enough.
Of course, anytime, Orville. Happy to help. Happy everything kind of works out to a happy ending. And thank you for the support and the recognition. Again, like we said, it's all serious. Like you just said, it's a family out here. So obviously, we really value you know the working relationship we have with Wiseman Aviation, your staff, your team, everything you guys do. So yeah, again, thank you to everybody. Really appreciate it.
Tim, this is Marty. I want to add a few things if possible. And I apologize for stretching this out, but I think it's critical to understand that Tim mentioned we have 3 people on shift doing that. Through the years, we've tried to work to get what we call temp staff set up for this. And between us and the county, there's a very small pool to draw from. So to help with that, we've contracted with a company to do our parking lots. It's almost impossible to clean our parking lots because unlike a Walmart or Fry's, they empty out at night. Our parking lot never empties out. Along with that, the city only has 19 staff members that are around the clock, 7 days a week moving snow. So they're running in half shifts. So you basically have about 8 people plus a manager on the streets at all times. Now, a lot of people don't understand that our street in front of the terminal, Pulliam Drive, is actually a public drive, and they're responsible for that. And not unlike other streets in the city, our city street got lost a couple times. And I don't mean that as a negative for them, but it just shows how much snow we got. And I want to thank that crew as well as ours, because they've really helped step up here in the last couple of weeks and get us finally back open on the street side. But this storm didn't just impact the airport, it impacted our entire community. And I really thank those who work out there for us, for the streets, Parks and Rec. There's a lot of snow removal throughout the city that is taken for granted, and it's a great amount of city employees that try to keep the city open at all times. And sometimes it's frustrating. I heard some people the other day complaining because our bike lanes weren't open. When you've got 8 people covering, I don't know how many miles of streets they have, some things have to be priority, keeping those streets open for medical. And so it takes us a while to get some of these other things. Thank you.
Well said, Barney. Yeah, and absolutely echo that. Well said. To just to piggyback on that again, I know we're running out of time, but to go back to the runway closures in particular, we can speak to our side. When we had those videos in the media outreach, that we were really proud that we hadn't, at least because of what we did and our criteria, we didn't close a runway. However, I believe as Orville or Claire had mentioned, that we did wind up closing a couple times during these past 3 or 4 storms for a very brief amount of time. And one of those reasons was because we had absolutely no visibility. And so the operators could not see anything. We couldn't keep up with it. And so kind of tying back into what Barney said, that everybody, literally pun intended, was buried. And so if you've never done snow removal, whether it be, runway or streets or whatever it may be, winters like this are extremely, extremely challenging. So good. Well said, Barney. Thank you.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you so much for sharing that story about your dog, Orville. That's made my heart happy. And I love hearing that, it's a family at the airport. Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Commissioner Waddell, motion to adjourn.
Thank you, sir. Do I hear a second?
This is Gail, I second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.